across US, Europe, and Asia Pacific. Proven expertise in managing global team delivering software projects. His proven ability in managing buildings, implementing complex enterprise level programs, projects. He is certified in sales and distribution of module with SAP and certified Scrum Master from Scrum's Alliance. He have passion for the teaching and have taught students across the 14 colleges in Mumbai in area of SAP and machine learning. So now I welcome Sri Arunjit Chaudhary sir to kindly deliver his lecture. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Just a correction. I don't know whether you're the latest update. So I've been working with around 118 colleges till now, all across India. And so I mean, I've got a good coverage all across. Anyway, thank you very much for the introduction, sir. And let me just share my screen and let me just, okay. Before I start, just few things I just want to say. Number one, let's make this session as interactive as possible because I believe in collaborative session, not just a monologue. So more you participate, the more the session is engaging. And I always feel that there's a lot to learn from the participants as much as whatever little I can impart my knowledge to others. So please share your knowledge as faculty. Many of you are research scholars, faculty, assistant professors. I mean, please share your knowledge with everybody. That will be very useful. And do interrupt me at any time. As far as possible, please unmute and speak. And I will also try to check my chat. But typically, I get distracted when I get into a chat window. So as far as possible, please unmute and speak. That would make the session more interactive, right? Having said that, let me get into my presentation. Yeah. Okay, let me try to get this chat on the side. Yeah, I'm purposely not doing the slideshow, otherwise I will lose this particular chat. Okay. If you're not able, I'm sure you're able to see my screen. And so yesterday, am I audible to all of you?
Yes, sir, you are audible. You continue, okay, sir.
Great. One small thing in between, I'll be asking all of you whether you have understood a specific topic. So please, I'll be requesting you to answer on the chat board, either yes, that means you have understood, or no, you have require some clarification, and then I'll be happy to repeat so that you are able to understand what I'm trying to say. So essentially today I'm going to cover today and maybe a part of tomorrow. I'll be covering something on the machine learning part, right? Some introductions on machine learning. I'm sure many of the machine learning you had an introduction yesterday, so I will not get into too much of depth into the basics, but I wanted to cover some part of some machine learning types so you understand. I will focus more on supervised learning today, and within that I'll cover some of the modules like the linear regression, the polynomial, the logistic, the decision tree, and random forest, right? And okay, so I just wanted to understand, I mean, Avigas, you had a introduction on machine learning. Can somebody explain to me what do you mean by machine learning? Anybody, please? What is machine learning? Type of AI, okay, fine. But what is machine learning beyond that? And as far as possible, please unmute and speak because I mean, writing so many words is easier to speak and share.
Sir, sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
If the participants have any question, they can raise their hand. I will, from my side, I will unmute them and they can speak with the sir.
Sure, no problem. So to make the machines able to learn themselves in the same way as human brain without explicit intervention of humans. Okay. So one of the important term I've seen here is machine learning through experience. Okay, that's a important word. Okay, what else? Please ignore my spelling mistakes. Let's focus on the contents. Yeah, anybody else? Okay, let me try to give you an example so that you will get to know what machine learning, how it has actually evolved. Imagine that I am the CEO of Hindustan Levers, and you all know what Hindustan Levers does. They are into manufacture of soaps, for example, and they have launched a new product, and that product has some problems in the sense that people have lodged some complaint about the product. Now, I mean, there could be some skin related problem, there could be some any other problem. But as the CEO of the company, I have heard that people have been complaining. I need to understand what are the issues. What is the issue which is coming up? Why are the people complaining about the product? So typically, when I am a customer and when I complain, there are various sources of making complaint. Number one is I can go to the website. I can go to some link for grievances or something, and then I can enter my profile, my name, my last name, whatever, and I can enter the exact problem. The second case could be that I call the customer care center and I tell them that, okay, this is the issue of this new product, okay, and they will record it. Now, when they record this data, it goes in the form of a database. And you all understand what is a database, what is a normalized database. And typically, all this goes into a relational database, which is called a structured data, right? Where you have a formal tables and rows and columns. The other way of complaining could be in a social media, which is an unstructured format of data. So I could make a complaint on Twitter, which generally happens. I could make a complaint on Facebook. I could also write to my peers and make a complaint about that particular product. Now, as the CEO of the company, I need to capture all this information, whether there's a structured source of information or an unstructured source of information. And while there are tools which are able or which are available to do this sort of consolidation of data or assimilation of data across various sources of information, the most important thing I want to highlight here is when there is so much of data, the CEO wants to understand what is the pattern in the data. I'm using the word pattern. So the CEO wants to understand what is the pattern in that data. And now when you say pattern, that will help the CEO to understand the demarcation of people who are talking about the product. One could be people are talking good about the product. Some people could be talking bad about the product, and some people are basically neutral. Okay. If I have this information, I can derive this information if I can derive some pattern out of the data. Okay. And based on the pattern and based on the analysis I've done and based on the analysis as to how many percentage of people are talking good or bad about the product, I can take a decision whether I need to continue my product, I need to discontinue my product, or I need to make some enhancements to the product, or even that could be a possibility. I need to do a proper communication to the customer because maybe the way they are using it is not the way it is desired, right? So there could be various possibilities based on the analysis which is done. Now, coming back to the word pattern. So when I talk of machine learning, it's all about how the machine learns through experience and tries to derive a pattern out of the data, right? So if I go by the definition of machine learning, that's what the way I put it. First of all, for doing any machine learning, I need to have some data. I need to have some input data on which I need to run some machine learning models, right? I feed the data into a machine. I feed the data into machine. The machine learns. The machine learns through experience. And based on the experience, the machine tries to derive a pattern between the input and output. Typically, you will have, when you have any data, you will have an input data, you will have an output data. So you will try to derive a relationship or a pattern between the input and output. And that's what a machine learning, a machine does. Basically, as it learns through experience, it tries to derive a pattern whereby it tries to derive a correlation between the input and the output. Once it has derived a pattern, the machine should be able to predict the output for a new set of input data. So if I have a new set of input data, the machine should be able to derive an output or predict an output, and the predicted output should be in line with the actual data, actual output data. This is how I will define machine learning in simple terms. Is this clear to all of you? Can I get a quick yes or no on the screen? Okay, great. So you guys have understood the basic definition of machine learning. That's very important. Okay. So while I'll be sharing this PPT to all of you, so just focus, don't have to write anything. I'll be sharing all this. So when I talk of machine learning, AI, everybody knows. So I mean, I don't have to explain you. So machine learning is the science of getting computers to learn and act like humans do and improve their learning through experience over time by feeding them with data and the information in the form of observations and real world interactions, right? Now, how has AI evolved? So very important. Okay. Can somebody tell me what is expert systems? Can somebody tell me what is expert systems? Yeah, you are reading it from the screen anyways. Yeah, personal is fine, but can you explain me in detail? Can you give me an example? Can you give me an example of an expert rule-based system? An industry example I would prefer. Fuzzy-based expert systems. Perfect. I think that's a good example of a medical diagnosis, right? So typically, when I do a medical diagnosis, I am a patient. I, as a patient, go to a doctor with a symptom. The doctor will do some diagnosis. He will ask me to do some test. Based on that, he will come out with the inference about what disease you have, and then he will do some prescription about a medicine, whatever. Now, this information is a set of rules where I can say if this is the symptom, if this is the symptom, if this is the diagnosis, and this is the disease based on which this is the prescription, I could have captured this in the form of a business rule. And this business rule could be written in the form of a program, a simple program. Okay. And as the business, and based on the business rules, I could write multiple or million or thousands lines of code. And then when I can execute that particular code, and when I give a particular symptom, the particular program can give me an output. Now, here I am doing explicit programming. But the problem with rule-based systems, though it is the most accurate systems, because you are actually coding everything in the system, right? But tomorrow, as the technology changes, as the business rule changes, as new symptoms come, or the new tests come, or the new set of prescriptions come, every time you have to go and explicitly write the code. Every time you have to go and explicitly write the code, which is a very tedious and strenuous exercise. And this will not be feasible, right? Practically, it will not be feasible. Okay. So that is one of the bottlenecks of expert systems, though it is can be considered as the most accurate system, okay, which will give you a right prediction. So to take care of this issue of changing business rules, go and writing programs, changing the code, when machine learning came into picture, the idea was that how can you derive some relationship within the data without explicit programming? How can you derive a relationship between the data without explicit programming? And that is where you have algorithms written which will help to derive patterns in the data, right? And using those algorithms, you are basically able to derive those patterns without writing long lines of code. And that's where this machine learning came into picture. So machine learning has been there for a very long time. It's not that it is just coming, but now it's more of a demand in the industry today. But again, as against expert system, machine learning can never be 100% accurate. Even today, whatever machine learning algorithms you have written is written today in the industry, the different types of models which are available, we are still far away from 100%, and it will never be. I mean, it is really not possible to get 100%. But today, in the benchmark from an industry perspective, even if I get an accuracy of 85-90% minimum, I can recommend a machine learning model to my customer, and that is what is happening today, right? So that is how we talk about pattern-based machine learning system. The third is something about robotic process automation. Now, this is another important process in a business environment. Example, I am Hindustan Levers, coming back to Hindustan Levers. And Hindustan Levers, they sell soaps, right? So what happens is there is a customer who comes to me, he takes a quotation for a soap, and then based on the quotation, I give a price. Once I give a price, the customer gives me a purchase order. Based on the purchase order, I deliver the goods to the customer. And once the customer acknowledges that he has received the product, I will invoice him, or I will send him a bill. Okay. This typically happens in the corporate environment. So I will send him an invoice, which is the right technical term for a bill. And based on the invoice, then I will follow up with the customer to get the payment. Now, this process in an ERP world, which is enterprise resource planning world, is called order to cash. So right from the time that you get a purchase order from the customer till the time you get the payment from the customer, that is called order to cash business process, right? Now, this complete business process can be automated. If wherever there are some repetitive tasks, they can all be automated. And that is where you have tools like robotic process automation tools, you have Prism, you have Automation Anywhere. These tools are there which are useful for automating any business process. That's where, again, you're trying to minimize the human intervention. Okay. The next part is the deep learning. I think you guys have already undergone some introduction to deep learning, and we'll obviously talk about neural networks and all that. So I will touch upon all that again tomorrow, because it's very important that some of these concepts you understand, the various concepts of gradient descent, stochastic gradient descent, and so on, right? So I'll touch upon that tomorrow also. So we have artificial neural networks, okay, where you have a lot of complex data. There are a lot of complex relationship between this data, and that's where, and you have large complex data where you generally use a GPU rather than a CPU for processing. So neural networks has become the new design or new architecture for processing large complex data. Then you come to CNN. The need was, how do you do object detection? How do you do object detection? Okay, image detection. For example, whether the image is a particular animal or is a number, you can use machine learning algorithms using CNN libraries to detect a particular image, right? And the third was the recursive neural networks, which is typically used for sequencing of sentences, right? If you have a sentence or if you have words in a sentence, the recursive neural networks using recursive network architecture, you'll be able to find out what is the next set of words in a sentence, or what is the next following sentence, what is the likely sentence that would come. So these are some of the evolution which has happened in AI and from a machine learning perspective. You talk about any industry today, whether you talk about the automotive industry, where you have the robots, which are again a part of AI. You talk about manufacturing industry, where using image recognition to ML libraries, you are able to detect whether a particular product is defective or not. So there are multi examples of machine learning across various industries, right? So this is how basically we talk about AI evolution. Some of the examples of machine learning, I'm sure many of you are aware. The one and most important, the first and most important thing that comes in everybody's mind is, of course, the Google search. And somebody had rightly highlighted in the chat board that Google search is again is based on the machine learning algorithm. Okay, it has got a machine learning algorithm running in the background. Then you talk about any movie recommendations that you basically see on the Netflix site, or you talk about product recommendations which you see on maybe on the Flipkart site. These are all examples of machine learning, right? Then let's talk about LinkedIn recommendation of jobs. So when LinkedIn recommends you any jobs, that again, there's a machine learning algorithm which, based on your profile and based on your resume, it will try to dig out all the necessary profiles, okay, from the various companies, right? So this is again based on machine learning algorithms. The concept of the combo in for McDonald's, right? You have the combo concept came through again a machine learning algorithms, right? So whenever you go to McDonald's and you actually buy something, that particular data which is entered on the point of sales is called the POS terminal. That you'd enter the data about the product you're buying and the quantity and the value. That particular data actually goes to a server in McDonald's, where there is a machine learning algorithm which runs through the data and tries to derive some patterns. And based on the patterns, it that's how the CEO derived made a conclusion that based on the population of people going combination of all the three products, that is your burger, fries, and the Coke, they decided to come out with a special pricing mechanism, right? So everything, whether you talk of analytics, whether you talk of machine learning, your ultimate objective for a CEO of a company is how it can help you in making decisions and how it can help you to come out with a better outcomes, right? Now, another example which I can give you is natural language processing. For example, if you're talking about the chatbot, you have the chatbot where you go to a website. The chatbot again works on the machine learning algorithm. There are some question and answers. When you ask any question, there are machine learning algorithms which are trained with different types of questions, and it can deduct a particular optimum answer. Another example which I can tell you is, if you remember, when Gary Kasparov, he played, I don't know if you guys are chess, many people who are chess, who love chess. He was one of the top chess players, you know, and during his time, there was a machine called Deep Blue from IBM, and he was challenged by IBM to play against the machine. And to everybody's surprise, while he took the challenge, to everybody's surprise, he lost the game. Okay, because that particular chess game or the machine was trained for last 10 years into the various combination of chess moves, and it used to come out with the most optimum or the best move, right? And that's how, you know, and that's how, you know, you could have a human being being defeated by a machine. Then you also have the Alexas and the Google Echoes and those machines, which are again all based on machine learning. If anyone of you have bought Tesla, it's not Tesla, my mistake. If anybody have bought the Alexa machine, the Alexa, when you start speaking to Alexa, saying that Alexa, you know, please give me this information, please give me that information. Initially, it takes time for the Alexa to understand your voice, to understand the frequency of your voice. And once it is tuned to that, understands your voice, then it is able to convert it into a text, and then it will try to give an information, right? So these are again various machine learning algorithms running in the background. There's one more thing I would like to talk about, NLP, which is very, very prominent in the hospitality industry. Today, if I go to a 5-star industry, a 5-star company, a 5-star hotel, and I eat something there, you know, there'll be a person who comes and takes a feedback from you. Either that feedback will be in the form of a physical form, or he may even try to, you know, he'll have a notepad where he will ask you to fill up the information. Now that particular data gets into a machine learning algorithm. And using that machine learning algorithm, the machine can able to tell you whether the feedback is good or the feedback is bad. Because the machine has been, because there are libraries, machine learning libraries, which help you to remove all the unwanted words and only focus on the important words, by which the machine can tell you whether the feedback is good or bad. So these are all various examples of machine learning, right? So anybody wants to share some more examples of machine learning? Medical diagnosis, I think I already spoken to you again. Today, doctors have tools available to predict the outcome or the prescription outcome of a patient based on the symptoms. Again, there are machine learning models which are used to do that, right? So anybody else who wants to, anybody in the participants who wants to share some examples with the team? Is there anybody, please, who wants to share? Okay. Predicting where to open a restaurant which can give profit. Okay. So you're capturing the location wise all the restaurant details. Is that case? Is that right, Dr. Arpana? So okay, fine. That's one example. Another example I heard in one of these university in Bhopal, there was, in the current COVID scenario, they had come out with a machine learning algorithm whereby they had a camera. And that camera, you can basically find out with somebody entering the gate, if the distance between two people are less than 2 meters, using the object detection mechanism of machine learning, it could probably tell you, or it could basically trigger a message on the speaker saying that please maintain a distance of 2 meters. You know, that's how it is to do. The very example of you know, this Tesla, which is the self-driving cars, which Apple has now come out with, or even Google has come out with, all these work on machine learning algorithms. I mean, it's so complex. I mean, just imagine that if a self-driving cars, can you tell me how does a self-driving car work? Anybody has, of course, we have not seen in India for sure, but anybody has seen a photograph or something, or has read about a self-driving car? How does it operate? Anybody? Can anybody throw some light on how a self-driving car works? Very good. You have sensors. What else? You have cameras, detection. Okay, so sensors are used for detecting objects. Okay, you have cameras which are used to capture your images. For example, if I've got a traffic light and I see across a traffic light, and that image, when it is camera is capturing that image is again fed into a machine learning algorithm which helps you to detect whether that particular car should stop or should continue depending on the signal. And also, if you see, there's a GPS which will actually navigate to the direction in which the car is supposed to go. And typically the way it works is that, when you actually train using a simulator, when you train a machine to basically go through a particular lane through the cameras, initially it will like to, if it's going in a hill, it will like to fall in a pit and all that. So the way it is programmed in such a way, it goes through that relearning process, so that all the time it is moving in the right lane. Okay, that is how so much of relearning, it's called the reinforcement learning. I'll come to that. So using that reinforcement learning, it tries to, at each state, it tries to learn and relearn and try to ensure that it goes and follows the right lane. So that is one example of very good example of how we use machine learning in self-driving cars, right? Now, some of the tools, occlusion detection, okay, GPS, right? So now some of the tools that we use today, very popular is of course the Python program, which we use very much in the industry. And we also use R in many cases, but obviously for Python is more popular than R. I mean, mostly in research organizations, I have seen people using R, but most of the commercial organizations, people use Python. Now there are libraries from there are libraries from Google, like the TensorFlow, which help you to write programs, to do on artificial neural networks, or to run. There are various machine learning libraries which are used, like the TensorFlow. You have various interactive environments like the Jupyter Notebook. You have the Spider from Python Spider. You also have Google Colabs. These are some of the interactive development environments where you can write Python scripts, okay, and you can execute those machine learning algorithms. You have various visualization tools like Tableau and Excel, and obviously there are machine learning libraries from SAS, SPSS, and so on, right? Whenever you want to learn something in terms of machine learning, you want to write some scripts, I always recommend people to install Anaconda Navigator. Anaconda Navigator is an open source which can be downloaded, and it has a lot of tools, including RStudio, which is for running R scripts. It has got Jupyter Notebook and Python Spider, which is used for executing Python scripts, right? So there are various tools available, okay? And with this, I just wanted to get into what are the various machine learning types. Well, I think, can anybody tell me what are the various machine learning types based on your learning yesterday? Based on the introduction I had yesterday, what are the various machine learning types? Supervised, okay. Now, what do you mean by supervised machine learning? Supervised, unsupervised, and very good. Supervised, unsupervised, and reinforcement. So what do you mean by supervised model? Yeah, so what do you mean by in a supervised model? So I'm sure in supervised model, you input data with labels. Okay, it's a label data. Okay. What is the main, I mean, you have training data is given in supervised, you are available training set. Okay. So you are aware of regression. You have come across regression. And have you guys learned about regression? Sir, was regression classification covered yesterday? Was supervision, was this covered yesterday in detail, regression and classification?
Yes, sir. Was basics was covered.
Basic
Not
was
in
covered.
detail. Yes.
Okay, so can somebody tell me what is the difference between regression and classification? What is the main difference between regression and classification? Okay, so you all are aware of this equation y equal to mx plus c. Okay, that obviously you know it's a straight line. So I'll not get into that. So regression, right? So in the case of regression, the y is basically a continuous variable, right? It is a continuous variable, and obviously you're right, it's quantitative because your y changes based on x, right? And you have a univariate regression where you have, okay, now if you know, I'm sure you are aware, x is called an independent variable, y is called a dependent variable, x is also called, many of you, I don't know whether they have told you yesterday, x we also use in the industry, we call it as a feature, or we also call it as a predictor. Okay, x we also call a feature, predictor, input, as well as independent variable. There are many terms for that. Okay, and m is called a coefficient in machine learning terms. Can somebody give me an industry example of a univariate regression? Can somebody give me an industry example of univariate regression? Can somebody give me an industry example of univariate regression? So, for example, if I have simple, if I have years of experience, product classification. What do you mean by product classification? Product classification will be a more of a classification data, right? Not a regression data. Is that right, Dr. Sudha Gupta? You are saying the quality of the product. Okay. So the quality of product depends. Okay, let's go to quality of a product will depend on various parameters. But quality of product will be generally a multivariate regression. So if I have a years of experience and salary, very simple example of a univariate regression. So your years of experience and the salary depends on the years of experience. Typically, as you years of experience goes up, your salary also goes up, right? So this becomes an example of a univariate regression, right? What about multivariate regression? Can anybody tell me anything about multivariate regression? Any example? So Dr. Sudha Gupta, when you're talking about product classification and quality, can you give me the example of multivariate regression here? What are the features and what is the dependent variable? cost of a product. Okay. So cost of a product would depend on, yes, it could be on the direct cost, it could be your indirect cost, it could be overheads. Perfect. So that could be an example. Weather forecast. Okay, weather forecast would generally be a classification data because either it's a cloudy or it's a non-cloudy. Okay, that becomes the classification data, right? So regression, again, multivariate regression, where the way I would target, if I have a price of a house depends on, it could depend on the square feet, depends on number of bedrooms, it could depend on the floor in which the particular house resides, and also the proximity to the malls, proximity to railway stations. These are all examples of features which contribute to the price of a house. Similarly, you have a price of a car, which could have various parameters which could decide the price of a house, right? So these are various examples of a regression. And the second part is obviously the classification. As you rightly said, that the dependent variable is discrete. That means it will have a fixed set of values, either 0 or 1, or whether the product is of a good quality or bad quality, or if I talking about the restaurant, whether the feedback is good or bad, or it could be a set of images, maybe numbers 1 to 8, or it could be a set of images of maybe a dog, cat, or whatever. So these are all set when the output is labeled and having a specific set of values. That's called the classification data. And then as I go through some of the models of regression and classification, we'll see how it works in Python, right? Can somebody give me an example of an unsupervised data? What have you learned yesterday from unsupervised model? What have you learned yesterday on unsupervised model? Anybody, please? No label, big data. Big data is more a volume of data. It has nothing to do with the unsupervised. Okay. No labels. When you say Dr. Durgesh Srivastava, no labels, what do you mean by that? Customer segmentation based on their content, grouping of data based on the content. Okay, good. Data is not labeled. Okay. Clustering. Okay. So some of the people are quite aware of what is clustering. Okay. What else? So let me give you an example. Yeah, target is not known because obviously, see, in the case of supervised model, you know the pattern of the data. You know there is an output, there is an input, and there will be some relation between the output and input, right? But in the case of unsupervised model, you don't know the pattern out of the data. There is no pattern, there is no input output. You have some set of data, you want to derive some relationship out of this data. And that's where you come across unsupervised model. So let me give you an example. As somebody used the word clustering, right? So suppose I'm giving a live example so that you can really correlate well. So suppose I'm the mall owner. A lot of people go to mall and they buy a lot of products from the various outlets which are there. And I need to come as a mall owner, I need to come out with some marketing strategy. I need to come out with some marketing strategy for specific set of people, a separate set of target audience. So what I want to do is I want to capture some information about the customers who are coming into it. Okay. So what I capture from him is probably I capture his age. I capture his basic sort of salary which he gets. And I'll also capture his spending power. Now, what is the spending power? Okay, spending power is something which is which they have derived, which says that okay, if my spending power is between 80 to 100, the person is very lavish. He likes to spend, he likes to innovate, he likes to try out new products. Is somewhere it is between 40 and 60 or 60. They are sort of a more of a moderate guy. He will think twice before buying a product. And the guys having a spending power of 10 to 20 are very thrifty. They will hardly spend. Okay. And so I I collect this data, I collect the age, salary, the spending power of all my customers. And once I do that, based on my requirement that I want to come out with a marketing campaign on a specific set of customers, that customer could be maybe the high salary, high spending power people. So what I can do is I can group the data as follows. I can say group 1 is high salary, high spending power. High spending power. Group 2 is high salary and low spending power or moderate spending power. And third could be high salary, low spending power. Now this grouping can be done. The number of groupings that I can do is up to me as a data scientist, depending on the problem statement, right? Now, if I need to get a number of distribution of groups, depending on my requirement, depending on what I want to achieve, then I'll create more number of groupings, right? So assuming that I do this, and then I try to derive a pattern out of this, where okay, high salary, high spending power, how many percentage are in this category? High spending, moderate spending power, how many people are in this category? High salary, low spending power, how many people are in this category? So based on the categorization and based on this classification I've done, and I know how much a percentage people are buying based on the different groups, I can decide what marketing strategy I need to do. So this is how I group these people, and as rightly said, this grouping is called clustering, right? This is called clustering in machine learning. The second part of unsupervised learning, I don't know whether you're aware, is something called learning association. And when you're talking about learning association, for example, when I talk about the movie recommendations, I talk about the product recommendations. Okay, all these work on a concept on unsupervised model. So there's a recommender engine which is there, which helps you to predict the will tell you the likely products that you are like to buy or the movies that you're going to see. Okay, these are again based on unsupervised model. And the third part, of course, you are aware, is a reinforcement learning. And in reinforcement learning, again, the main objective here is that how do you ensure that when suppose a robot when it gets trained to do a particular set of action, that robot when it is trained in such a way when it moves from there's something called an action, there is something called a state. When it moves from one state to another state, and that and the destination state is the desired state, then it gets a sort of a reward. And when it is not the desired state, it basically you give a penalty. So every time the reinforcement learning, it relearns every time, with the main objective is how it can maximize the rewards and how it can minimize the penalty. So all your robots, then your chess example of Kasparov, which I talked about, all these were built using reinforcement algorithms, right? So, and typically in the industry, you will have a hybrid model. You will not have just you will not just have a classification. You will not just have a regression. You will not have just unsupervised. You have a combination of maybe a classification regression. You will have a combination of unsupervised as well as regression. So there could be different examples you could have in a particular application, right? It's a hybrid model where you could have a combination of supervised and unsupervised learning. Okay. So this covers the machine learning types. Anybody has any questions? Can I get a few yes or no if you have understood on the screen, please? Good. So all of you have understood. Very nice. Now I am coming to a very important slide, and this slide is, please pay attention to this slide. And this is the crux of writing a machine learning script. Okay, whenever you are going to be a data scientist and you're going to write some code, you need to follow these steps. Okay, now imagine I'm the HR manager of a company, and the HR manager has got the age and salary of the employees. Now this age and salary he has given to me as a data scientist, and is asking me to come out with a machine learning model. Okay, now between age and salary, which is the independent variable? Between age and salary, which is the independent variable? Correct. So age is your independent variable and your salary is your dependent variable. Absolutely right. So imagine that you get 1,000 records from your customer, from the HR manager, and the customer is saying that please come out with a model. So the customer is saying, please come out with a machine learning model. So what I will do, first of all, when I get this data, I have to first pre-process the data, because typically in the industry, typically when you get the data is never perfect. You could have duplicate data, you could have null data, you could have invalid data, you could have outliers. When you say outliers, they are basically outside the range. Okay, you could have missing data. I mean, there is no data available for this particular set of records. So we have to ensure that we have to pre-process the data before training the model or training the machine. It's very, very important. In a typical industry, there are 4 main phases, right? First of all, if I come to this slide, I will just go a bit ahead. Yeah. If you see this particular slide, you typically have, first step is a business understanding. So if you see any project in data science, you need to have a business analyst, because the role of the business analyst is to who understands that domain, whether it's a retail, whether it is manufacturing, whether it's a healthcare, whatever is the domain, he needs to understand the domain, because when he gets the data from the client, he needs to make a head and tail of it, right? So you need to understand the data, you need to understand the correlation between the various data. So you need to have a business analyst who has a business understanding and who can interpret the particular data that is given to me by the client. Then I do a data collection after data preparation and exploratory data analysis. So I do a lot of data manipulation. I try to find out what is the mean, what is the median. I find a lot of statistical output. And as I've been telling to all my participants, all my students, if you want to really pursue data science, you need to have a very strong foundation on statistics. If you don't have a strong foundation on statistics, it becomes very difficult for you to understand machine learning algorithms and to have a behavior, to understand the behavior or the correlation between multiple variables or features, right? So this typical data collection, preparation, exploratory data analysis phase is the main phase where you are actually doing the data pre-processing, you're taking care of all the null data, you're taking care of all missing data and so on. And typically in the industry, 60 to 65% of the time goes in this phase. This data collection, preparation, exploratory data analysis, which I can totally call it as a data preparation phase, takes that much time in a project life cycle. So you need to ensure that your data is perfect, your data is clean. And as I always say, the more the data, the better the model will behave. You should minimize any deletion of data, because that is very, very, because if you delete your data, you will have less number of records for training the model, right? So you need to ensure that you have the right data. Okay. Now, once you have processed the data, so now you have a processed data. Now you split this data into a training set and test set. Now, why do we do this splitting into training and test set? Anybody can tell me? Anybody has some idea for sure? Why do we split the data into a training set and test set? Anybody please can tell me why do we need a training set and a test set? Because of unbiasedness. What do you mean by unbiasedness? Then my question is, Sivaranjani, is why do you split your data into a training set and a test set? Very good. So I'm saying training set will give the system to match predict the output, learn from the system. How better is the training? Okay. So when I have a training set, so essentially training set is used to train the model. That is the basic definition. While a test set is basically used to measure the accuracy of the model. Simple. So if I want to train the model, so that's why you call the model evaluation phase. Okay. And using test data, you test the accuracy of model. That's called the model evaluation phase. Model evaluation phase and model this one. Okay. So one is the model exploration. What is modeling phase and the model evaluation phase. These are the two phases, right? Now, typically 70% of your data should be minimum test training set. Minimum 70% should be training data. Sometimes it could be 80, it could be 85, depending on the volume of data, and not more than, and up to 30% you could have test set. There is no fixed rule, but typically you should not go less than 70% for training data. So you split your data into a training set and a test set. Once you have done this split, then I take in this case, there are 700 records of training data because my total is 1000 records. I take the independent variable and the dependent variable. I feed it into the model or the machine, and the machine will come out with a pattern. The machine will come out with a pattern out of the data. The machine will come out as a pattern out of the data. That means based on the pattern, it will try to develop a correlation between the independent variable and the dependent variable. Now, once we have done this, I take the 300 records of the test data. I take the independent variable of the test data. I take the independent variable of the test data, and then I feed it into the model. This is my model. I feed it into the model and come out with a predicted dependent variable, in which case this is salary. So I've taken the test data, I input the independent variable of the test data to my model, because now the model has learned and tried to come out with a pattern or come to derive with some correlationship between the independent variable, and it will come out with the predicted output or the predicted dependent variable, which is a salary. Then I will compare the predicted salary with the actual salary. Sir, can you put this person on mute? Thank you, sir. So what I'm doing here, I'm comparing the predicted salary with the actual salary. And based on this, if my predicted salary is close to my actual salary, that means I say that my model is a recommended model. to the client. And again, as I told you that again, this is where you measure the accuracy of the model. And typically if you have 85-90% accuracy, I can recommend this model to my customer. Is this steps clear to everybody? Can I get quick yes or no on the screen? Okay, so most of you have understood. Any questions? Because this is very, very important. Okay. Now you have decided, or you have gone through this model workflow. I've also gone through this. See, final stage is model deployment. Once a model is ready, you have evaluated the model, then you deploy the model at the customer premises. So this is your typically project life cycle of any data science project, right? Now the next step I'm going to go is I'm going to cover what is data pre-processing. Okay, and here I'm going to get into Python. Now many of you, I'm sure, I think you all had a basics of Python, and obviously my intention here is not to teach you Python. And if you have to go to some advanced Python, if you're aware of Python, well and good. But again, I don't know the mix of the crowd here. There could be technical and non-technical. So my intention here is, while I explain to you, my is to explain to you what the code does and not explain you what the code is, right? So it is up to you to take that code and get into the depth and understand what it is all about, right? Because I just want to ensure that you understand what I'm trying to do more than what exactly the code is doing. And while I will share the scripts with Sir, so that he can share it with you later once I share the PPT and the scripts by tomorrow after the session, right? Now, when it comes to data pre-processing steps, and again, I'm talking with respect to Python because that is the platform which I've chosen for this session. The various data pre-processing steps are: one is first to import the libraries. So there are some important libraries which you need to use for executing any machine learning script. So you have to first import the libraries. Then you import the data set. The data set, that means the data that you're going to use. In that last case, which I talked about, years of experience and salary, or the age and the salary, that is the data set which I need to import in using a library, by which I can import into my application or into my program. And after that, since I'm going to talk about a supervised model, I need to identify which is my independent variable and which is my dependent variable. So I have to identify which is my independent variable and dependent variable. Now, I want to emphasize here is that there could be n number of independent variables, but there'll be only one dependent variable or one feature or one output, right? Then how do you take care of missing data? So I will give an example of, if there's a missing data, what will you do? Then data categorization. How do you take care of data categorization? Then splitting the data into training and test set, which I already talked to you as when I explained you the workflow. And finally, I will also cover something called feature scaling. So these are the very important steps you need to do as part of data pre-processing before you get into the modeling phase, right? Okay. So the various libraries which are important today in Python is, one is the NumPy, which is typically used for executing any numeric calculations. Then the second is matplotlib.pyplot, which is again used for graphical analysis. And the third is the pandas, which is used for manipulating your data set. So whatever data set you're going to import into your system, that data set could be an Excel file, it could be a CSV file, or it could be a PDF file. There are libraries within pandas, there are functions which help you to import this data into the program, right? Then you import the data set. So using pandas library, this is where you are importing the data set. This is my data file. And I'm identifying which is my independent variable. So typically X is always designated as an independent variable and Y is the dependent variable. And in Python, variables are case sensitive. So be very careful whether you want to use capital X or small x. And for my example, I'll be using capital X for the independent variable and small y for dependent variable, right? So I identify which is my independent variable and then identify which is my dependent variable. Okay, now what I will do is I'll go to Python Spider. Now this is my Python Spider. Let me minimize this. Let me minimize this. Now this is my Python Spider interface. The latest version I think is 3.9 and what I installed is 3.8. And if you see the way the window is splitted here, so you have the left hand side where you have the script where you write the program. On the top left, on the right hand side top, you have 3 tabs. One is the help, where you want to get some help on any function and the parameters. You have variable explorer, where whenever you are executing a particular line of code, okay, if you are assigning some variables, that variable output can be seen here. And this is a place where you have the files which you want to execute. Okay. And now the bottoms, and typically all the .py files, anything file with .py is a Python script file. So anything which I create through Python script, any script which I write or any program I write needs to have a suffix of .py. And obviously CSV is your data file, right? And on the bottom right is your console. And typically whenever you execute any line from the here, that line will be shown here and executed here. So your execution of the commands happens in the console. So whether the command is successful or the command is coming with the error message, all that can be seen in the console, right? So now what I'm going to do here, I'm in a folder called data pre-processing. And within that, there I have a file called data pre-processing template.py, and I have a data set which is data.csv. Now, this data.csv has got 4 fields: country, age, salary, and purchased. So imagine that I'm an automotive company and I'm capturing the profile of a person, his age and salary, the country to he belongs, and I want to know whether he's going to buy a car, a specific brand of car, or is not going to buy a particular car. That's what I want to analyze. Now, having said that, can somebody tell me what sort of data is this? Is this a supervised data or an unsupervised data? Is this a supervised data or an unsupervised data? So Pavandip says supervised and Shrikant says unsupervised. So Pavandip, why are you saying supervised? Or let me put it this way. If you're saying supervised, is it a regression or a classification data? Is it a regression or a classification data? So Deepak is saying regression and Pavandip is regression and Shrikant is saying upper supervision because it is unrealistic and non-classification of data. Okay, I've got different answers. Now, if I were to define this, if I want to interpret this data, I will say that this is a classification data because my analysis is basically based on the profile of the customer, whether he is likely to buy a particular car or is not going to buy a car. That is my analysis I need to do as a data scientist. If that is the analysis I have to do, then obviously this is a classification data, and this purchase field is your dependent variable. And country, age, and salary are your independent variables. Okay, so country, age, and salary are independent variables, and purchase is your dependent variable. So what I will do now, I will first do all the data pre-processing steps. Here's my exercise is I need to do all the data pre-processing steps. So what I do is I go back to my script. Okay, I go back to my script. I can typically, this code is already there, so I'm not writing the code for everybody's, to save time. I could execute the complete code by executing a specific line, or I could execute one line at a time. So typically when I'm learning for the first time, I will take one code at a time and see the output in the console. So let me do one thing. I will first import my libraries. So it's very important, we have to comment the code. Okay, commenting the code is very, very important so that you know what your code is doing, right? Or anybody else who sees your code should be able to understand what you have written. So first of all, I'm importing my libraries. My first library is called pandas, sorry, NumPy. So now once it has executed, so I suggest you implement it later. Please don't do anything along with me. It's not going to help in the online mode. So you just understand what I'm doing, and you can do it later. Okay. So once I import the NumPy, then I will see the output here, and the console is saying it's fine. Then I go and import the matplotlib. This is where I'm importing the library, which is mainly into graph, basically for graphs. And this is my import for pandas. That is my data. This is my library for manipulating my data set. Then I read my data set. I read data.csv. And if I want to see this data, I go to my Variable Explorer, and this is my data set. This is my data set. Now, what is the problem with this data set? Is there any problem with this data set? Yes, you have some NaN values. That means there are some null values. So what will you do first as a data scientist? What will you do as a data scientist? Data cleaning. So what will you do with the missing data? So what will you do with the missing data? Average? Is that the first thing you will do as a data scientist? Skip. That is the last resort you have to do. As I said, if you reduce the number of records, your number of training records will go down. How will you replace null values? 0. How can you replace a 0 salary there? What will you do as a data scientist? Think yourself from a customer angle. Customer has given you this data. You are a data scientist. What will you do next? Consider salary based on the ages. And that's fine, but what is the first step you will do? The first and important step, all of us, the first and most important step, all of us need to understand. This is very important. Who owns the data? The ownership of the data is not with you as a data scientist. The ownership of the data is with the client. You cannot do any manipulation of data unless you get any concurrence with the client. You have to ensure that if there is some missing data, first and foremost, you have to go back to the client and say, please provide me the missing data. If only the client, so the client will probably check, maybe when he sends the file, he had forgotten to send some missing values. So he'll be glad to provide you the missing values. Or if there is null value, or even there's a duplicate value, before you can check with the client whether it's actually duplicate or not. Okay, because there could be a lot of error in the data entry or whatever. So you have to first ensure, because the responsibility of the data is with the client, always remember that the ownership of the data is not with you as a data scientist, it is with the client. So the client has to ensure that he gives the right data, and it's your prerogative to go back to the client and ask for the correct data. So once you get the correct data, so you fill up the correct data based on what the client gives. But if you have a scenario where the client does not have the data, then the client says that you go ahead with your own assumptions, make your assumptions and fill up the data. So whatever assumptions you're going to make based on your experience, based on the data set, again, those assumptions need to be communicated to the customer. I cannot just say that I'll take an average value and I will use it. Always go back to the customer and get his concurrence. Because the data preparation phase, which is your major phase, needs to have the signature of the client before you get into the modeling phase, right? So you have to ensure that the data is correct. So in this case, and the scenario is the customer, if he doesn't have the data, then I can make some assumptions, and I made the assumptions that I will probably take, as somebody rightly said, I can take the average of the salaries, put it here. I can take average of the age and put it here. Okay, that's what I'll do. Now, before that, I will first define which is my independent variable and which is my dependent variable. So if I see the value of X here, so my X is country, age, and salary. And what is my Y? Y is purchase, yes or no. So this is how I've identified which are the independent variables and which is the dependent variable, right? Now here what I'm doing, I am going to take the age and salary. I will calculate the mean of the existing values and put it in the missing values. And that's what I'm doing here. So when I execute this, and now if I see the value of X, if you see the missing values got filled up by the average, you will see that 60,000 is the average of the salary and 38.7 something is the average for the age. So this is how you take care of missing data. And please note that never do anything without the concurrence of the client. Okay, it's not going to help, right? So any questions on this? Have you guys understood this? Is this clear to all? Can I get a quick yes or no on the screen? Okay, great. The next thing which I have to do, if you see, is something called my data characterization. Okay, and this is another very important data preparation steps. Any text field, any text which is there in the data will not be helpful, because machine learning algorithms only understand numbers. Machine learning algorithm, impute is a function. Okay, so you can get into the details, Dr. Surya Prasad, later. These are all functions which I use. Okay, so here I'm not explaining any code here, so please don't ask me any code. Let's focus on the machine learning. What is the outcome, right? So In this case, you have fields like country and purchased. Yes or no. These are two fields which are not numeric, which are text. So you should have ways to convert this text to a binary number or any numeric number, because as I said, machine learning algorithm, when it goes into modeling, it will not understand any text field. So to convert this text field into a number is called data categorization. And I'll explain you an example. So here, for example, you have country. You have a country field. And suppose there are 3 unique values of country, say France, India, and Germany. You have got 3 different values of country. Okay. So what I will do in Python, I will first convert this into, I will give some serial number to this 0, 1, and 2. So in Python, if you all of you know some basic Python that you have learned, anything, any array in Python starts with 0. Okay, and if you have heard of R, the one of the main difference between Python and R is in R the array starts with 1, while in Python it starts with 0. So your country will have, so what I'm doing here, depending on the number of countries, I create a serial number here, 0, 1, and 2. And then what I do is I represent France by an array of 3 variables. So there's an array of 3 variables created because there are 3 countries. It will create 3 variables. If there are 4 countries, it will create an array of 4 variables. So in the case of France, it may be represented as 1, 0, 0. If it is India, it is represented as say 0, 1, 0. And if it is Germany, it will be represented as 0, 0, 1. So the presence of 1 implies that a value exists, while the other values will be all zeros. Okay. And this is already done internally by some ready functions of Python. You don't have to do that yourself. It is just for you to understand what the function does. Now to do this function of converting to 0, 1, 2, this is done by a function called label encoder in Python. It is done by a function called label encoder. And the function which converts this into a list of variables with an array, this is called again dummy variables. So it has created 3 dummy variables. It has created 3 dummy variables, and this dummy variables, and this the function to convert into dummy variables is called one hot encoder. So you have a label encoder which converts into a serial numbers, and then you have a one hot encoder which converts this into a dummy variables, or which converts into array of variables. Okay, this is how data categorization. And similarly, when you had another field called purchase yes or no, what you do is, since there are only 2 values, you run label encoder function and label encoder and convert it into 0 or 1. So 0, because there are only 2 values, so 0 means maybe no and yes means yes. So this is the way I will convert all text values which I am using for analysis into a number or binary format. So let me first execute this for you, and then if you have any questions, you can ask me. So now I have completed my average company. Now what I'm doing, now first I will just execute the label encoder function. See, what I will do is I will execute till here. Okay, and now when I click on X, I'm only doing on my, now see, internally it has converted into a serial number 0, 1, and 2. Right? And once I execute the one hot encoder and I see this X again, now do you see that my 0 is separated by 1, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, and so on. So it has created 3 dummy variables followed by age and salary. So this is how your data characterization works. Similarly, if I do for Y, my current Y is yes or no, I will convert this into 0 and 1. This is what I'm going to do. It converts into 0 and 1. Okay. Any questions? Have you guys understood what is data characterization? Yes or no on the screen? Okay, so this is clear to all of you. Very nice. Okay. The next step that I will do is I will split my data. I will split my data into a training set and I will test it into test set. Okay. So what happens is that I will create 4 variables. X train for the training set independent variable, X test set independent variable, Y train and Y test. So I will create 4 variables. Okay. And what I'm doing here in this particular function, you don't require one hot encoder of Y because there are only 2 values of Y, 0 and X, yes or no, right? You don't require one hot encoder. You only require label encoder. Okay. Is that clear, Ratish? Okay. So now what happens is here I'm using test size equal to 0.2, which means my 20% is test set and 80% is training set. Now see, let me execute this next. So totally, if you see here, I have got X, which has got 10 rows, 5 columns, because there are 3 dummy variables, age and salary. Okay. And Y is 10 rows, comma, since there's only one dependent variable, you don't explicitly say comma 1. It just says state comma. Okay. Now see, I'm going to split this data into training set and test set. Now let me execute this. Okay. Now if you see here, you have now X train, which is 8, 5, because 80% is training records and 5 columns. X test is 2, 5, Y is 10, of course, and then you have Y train, which is 8, and Y test is 2, So you have split up into 10 records and you have split those 10 into a training set of variables and a test set of variables. Okay. So this is how I will have to first do the split. Okay, so I created 4 variables: X train, X test, Y train, and Y test. Okay. Now, having done that, the next step or the last step of data pre-processing is what I call as the feature scaling. The last step which I'm doing is basically I'm going to talk about feature scaling. Now, what is this feature scaling? Now, when you go to age and salary, or here you have years of experience and salary. Typically, years of experience will be maybe from 1 to 40 years. So if I'm 60, retiring at the age of 60 or whatever, then I've got 1 to 40 years. Okay. But my salary can be the range from 10,000 to even a crore, depending on whether I'm the CEO of a company. Now, if you see the range of the data, my years of experience is between 1 and 40, but my salary is between 10,000 to 1 crore a month. I'm just giving an example here. Okay. Now, see the range of the values. Now, if a machine learning algorithm were to do a plotting of this in a graph, where I want to correlate the independent dependent variable, it's very difficult for the machine learning to do the algorithm to do an analysis or do a graphical analysis, because these variables are in different ranges. So when there are variables in different range of scales, it is important that you bring those variables to a common base scale. And to bring to this common base scale, we use the functionality called feature scaling. And there are two functions. So with the feature scaling, there are two functions we can use. One is called the standardization and one is called the normalization. So standardization is basically we use a function called the standard scaler, and for normalization, we call a function called min-max scaler. Okay. So this is the function which is used to calculate the new set of values, and typically after scaling, the values will be between -1 to 1 or -2 to 2. Okay. So as I said, there are two important functions, standard scaler or min-max scaler. You can use any of these two functions, but the objective of using this function is to scale down the values to a common base scale, and then you don't have to really bother how this function works, because it already takes care of those internally. It calculates and converts into those small values. But the idea of feature scaling is how do you bring your features to a common base scale, and that is all about feature scaling as a functionality. Is this clear to all of you before I execute this feature scaling command? Is this clear why we are using feature scaling? So let me execute and show it to you. Okay, Aparna is asking me to repeat it. See, what happens is you have got age, years of experience and salary. So your years of experience could be 10 years, 100,000, 20 years, 500,000, and 30 years could be 1 crore. See, typically, when I have to draw a graph between years of experience and salary, the range of the data is different. Here it is between 10 to 40 years, but the salary could be between 10,000 to 1 crore. Sorry, this is inflated. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, 1 crore. So it could be between, so my salary could be between 1 lakh, yes, 1 lakh to even 10 crores or 1 crore. But my salary, years of experience would be between 10 and 30 or 10 and 40. So these are in different scales. So machine learning algorithm says that you need to bring these values to a common scale for the algorithm to understand or correlate between these two variables or any variables. Okay, or to do a graphical representation, you need to bring it to a common base scale. And that is where you use the functions of min-max scaler or standard scaler to bring it down to a common scale. Is that clear, Dr. Arpana? Okay, great. So now let's execute and show it. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my algorithm. Now I've got X-train. If I see my X-train is my 8 records of those 5 variables, and X-test is my test data, 2 records. Okay. Now I can use all the min-max scalars. For now, I will use a standard scalar function, and this will be implemented on both X-train and X-test. Now, if I see the value of X-train, X-train, see the values now, what was earlier and what is now. See, all the values are basically brought to a very small value, -0.5, -1.1. You don't have to bother what is all this all about, but it has basically brought it down to a small value so that it comes to a common scale. And this is what feature scaling does. If I do X-test, again, you will see something values 2.64, -0.774, and so on. Okay, so you are basically bringing down to a common base scale so that you can easily do an analysis. So this is essentially the steps for data pre-processing before you get into a modeling phase. Any questions till now? Any questions till now to the data pre-processing phase before I go to regression? Can I get a quick yes or no on the screen? So Amar Patil, no sir means you don't have any questions, I presume. Okay, fine. Okay, great. So now you have understood feature scaling. Now we will get into regression. Okay, so today we will cover regression, and then tomorrow we will cover classification, and then we will cover some ANN. Okay, now let us get into what is regression. So as I've told you earlier, sorry, let me bring this down to crazy. So in a typical regression, you have, as I said, you got y equal to wx plus wx0. You could have a univariate regression, you have a multivariate regression, and obviously, as I said before, that you could have, when you have a multivariate regression, you will have multiple features, and in univariate regression, you will have single feature. Now, in regression, there are various algorithms available. You have the simple linear regression, multilinear, polynomial, support vector, decision tree, random forest, and so on, right? So I will first start with a simple linear regression, but before I get into regression, I want to explain you this slide, very, very important slide, okay? Now, if you remember, we talked about the years of experience and we talked about the salary. We talked about the years of experience and we talked about the salary. Now, when we had trained the model, when we trained the model with the training data, the model came out with a pattern. And when you use the test data, if you remember that workflow, when you use the test data, you inputted the independent variable of the test data to the model, and the model came out with the predicted output or the predicted dependent variable. So this line, what you see here is the predicted line. This line, which you see here, is the predicted output. That means the model is predicting that this is my relationship, this is experience and salary. And the dots which you see are the actual data. Actual data. So for me, or for the model to be efficient or to recommend the model to the client, I need to ensure that this gap between the actual data and the predicted data is minimum. So I denote my actual data by yi, and I denote the predicted data by yi caret. This is typically I use in the industry. Yi caret is for the predicted data and yi is the actual data. And if I do a sum of yi minus y caret the whole square, okay, because I am more interested in the square, not the negative values or this, right? This sum of yi minus y square, if my yi and y predict has to be close to each other, my sum of yi and y predict has to be close to 0. The yi and y predict, the sum of y and y predict has to be minimum. So, and this function is called the cost function, or we also call it ordinal squares, and sometimes we also call it the mean square error. Okay. These are various terms which we are used. So the idea or the purpose of a regression model is how do you minimize the cost function. How do you minimize the cost function? Now, this is applicable even for classification. So you have a predicted output and you have an actual output, right? So this is how you calculate the minimum. So typically what happens, you have theta 0 and theta 1, which are your coefficients. So the regression model in such a way, it goes and varies the theta 0 and theta 1 in such a way that it tries to minimize the cost function, which is j of theta 0, theta 1, which is sigma of the predicted value minus actual value, the whole square. That is the cost function. Okay, so this is how the principle of linear regression algorithm works. It works on the principle of minimizing the cost function. Okay, and they use a function called gradient descent as the principle, where using how it can, using the various using the gradient descent algorithm, it tries to minimize the cost function. Okay, so now let us take the example of a simple linear regression. So let us execute this script on Python. So what I'm going to do, let me first initialize. I can initialize all this data, I can remove this garbage so that I can start from fresh. I can close this. Okay, it is minimized. It will minimize this, it will minimize the variables. And I will go and select a regression folder, simple linear regression folder, and I say select folder. Okay, and I'm going to go to files, and I'm going to select simple linear regression.py. Okay, simple linear regression.py. This is my script. And what is my data set? My data set is salary data.csv, which is a simple data of years of experience and salary. Very simple example of an HR manager's data, which I'm going to capture as a data scientist. And I'm going to come out with a model. Okay. So the first thing which I need to do is need to do the data pre-processing. Okay. So as part of data pre-processing, I will first import all the three libraries. I'll import NumPy, I'll import Matplotlib, and I will import Pandas. Then I will import the data set. If I want to see my data set, go to Variable Explorer, double click here. I see my data, user experience, salary, and I see that there is no missing data. So I don't have to, so my data is fine. I don't have to worry. So I now decide which is my independent variable and which is my dependent variable, right? So my independent variable is years of experience and salary is my dependent variable. Now, for this set of data, where is my data gone? Do we need to do data categorization? Yes or no? For this set of data, do we need to do data categorization? Are you guys getting an echo? Pankaj sir, are you getting an echo? Hello, am I audible? Can somebody speak whether you're getting an echo? Is it okay? My voice is audible to all, because I'm just hearing from somebody it's echo or something.
No, sir, your voice is clearly audible. You can continue, sir.
Okay. Okay. So my question to all of you is, do we need to do data categorization? Yes, anybody? Praveen is saying yes. 1 minute. I have to go down. No, sir. Okay, it's no. since the range is in line, see, the reason of you're not doing data categorization is not because your range is in line. The data categorization is basically to convert text. No? So you don't have any text field in this data. Since you don't have any text field in this data, you don't have to do data categorization. Okay, then what about splitting data? Do we need to split the data into text or numeric? Do you need to split the data into training and test set? Is it required or no? As a process of data pre-processing, yes, we have to split. There is no option because you need to evaluate the model using the test data, right? So you have to first split the data. So I'm taking here for simplicity 10 records, as out of 30 records, 20 records are my training set and 10 records are my test set. Okay. Next thing. So I have got X test, Y test, X train, Y train. Simple. What about feature scaling? Is it required? Do you need to do feature scaling? Absolutely right. We need to scale because your years of experience, as already explained you multiple times, your years of experience and salary are in different scale. So you need to do feature scaling. But here, what we are saying that the linear regression algorithm, which we are going to use for doing the modeling, automatically takes care of feature scaling. You don't have to do any explicit coding for feature scaling for linear regression. So you can avoid doing doing feature scaling explicitly. That's why I have commented the code here. That means I'm not going to execute this. Okay. So now that my pre-processing steps are done, my next step is modeling. So what I do here, I use my linear regression algorithm. I feed my X train and Y train, which are my independent and dependent variables, into my data set. Into my model. Now this step, now the pattern has come out with the, now that the machine has come out with a pattern, I will input the X test and I will predict the salary. I will input the X test, which is the independent variable, and predict the salary. Now with what should I compare YPRED? With which variable should I compare YPRED? Anybody, which variable I'm going to, absolutely right. I am going to compare YPRED with Y-test because Y-test is my actual test data and YPRED is my predicted test data, predicted value of the test data. Perfect, right? So one way of doing it is I can just click on here YPRED and I can take Y-test. And I can do some sort of physical comparison, which is obviously not the right case because you will have millions of records. But just for the simplicity, I can just compare that why the actual value is 37,000, it is 40. If it is 122, it is 123, it is pretty good. 57, 65, quite a difference. 63, 63, good. So I can just sort of video comparison of what is the predicted and actual value for the test data. So this is one way of comparison. The other way of comparison is I can take a plot. I can do a plot. What is this plot? This is what I had explained you earlier about the cost function. This is my training data. This is the pattern which has been derived from the model for the training data. And these are the actual data, actual training data points. Okay. And you will see that while some of the points are close, there are many points which are far away from the linear line. But if I draw with the test data, which is typically used for measuring my model, you see the model is working pretty well, except for these 1 or 2 points. Most of these points are close to my predicted line. That means my cost function is close to minimum, right? So this model should work with this set of data. So this is another way of representing my data using, one you can do a manual comparison by graphical. Secondly, you do a graphical representation as I showed here. And the third is using a matrix. So you have a matrix in regression model to calculate the accuracy. And what is the matrix? I go back to my slide. The way to calculate is basically called a R square. We use R square to measure. I use R square to measure the accuracy of the model. And what is the R square? 1 minus sum of the square residual divided sum of the square total. And what is the sum of the square residual? What is the sum of the square residual? What does this mean? Anybody? We discussed this. What is the sum of the square residual called? What is the sum of the square residual? This is called the cost function. And this is the SS total, which is sum of yi minus y average, the whole square. This is yi minus y predict, and this is sum of yi minus y average. So now, in case my cost function has to be minimum, this has to be minimum. That means if this is minimum, this divided by this has to be close to 0. That means my R square has to be close to 1. That means if I get an R square, something close to 1, okay, that means my model is efficient. So something which is more than 0.85, 0.9, I can always recommend the model. Okay, so this is how I measure the accuracy of the model. I will show you executing another script. Okay, so the same data, I am going to run one more script called model efficiency.py. Here what I'm doing is I'm again importing the model, importing my data set, libraries. I imported one more library called R2Score, which is used for finding out the efficiency of the model. I import my data set. I find out my independent variable. I find out my dependent variable. Then I do the splitting, the same script I'm running. Feature scaling not required. I train the model. I predict the model. And now what I'm doing is I'm going to use this command to compare the y-test and y-pred, the R2Score function. And my R2Score comes to 0.97, which means this model is pretty good for this set of data. So this is typically, I execute a simple linear regression script right from the data preprocessing step to the model evaluation using the matrix. Either you can compare it, do a visualization, or you can use the R2Score to calculate the accuracy of a regression model. Is this clear to all of you how I have executed a regression model? Any questions? We'll wind up for today. Any questions? We have 5 minutes. Anybody has any questions? Anybody has any questions on this regression model? How we have calculated the model efficiency? What is the concept of cost function? I hope you guys are going to take something as a lesson out of this, something you have learned, very important, that is important. You can use either standardization or normalization. Okay, so you can use any one of them for feature scaling. It doesn't matter. You don't have to use both. You have to use only one. Okay. So cost function, as I said, is how you want to minimize the difference between the predicted value and the actual value. That is what it is. So yi was my actual value of the test data, and y predict is the predicted value of the test data. So as we use model to measure the accuracy, Okay, you use basically yi minus y predict the whole square as the sum function. Are there any parameters to evaluate? So there are a lot of ways to optimize the models. We can use grid search. You can use, there are various functions available to optimize the performance. You can use, there's something called grid search where you can optimize your parameters so that you can get a better efficiency. So there are ways to do that. Okay, so you can use grid search to optimize the parameters, right? So that's called, it is called the parameter tuning. Is that clear, Dr. Surya Prasad? Any other questions? Yes, for regression, we use R2 score. For multiple regression, you use something called the adjusted R square also. There is another way to calculate adjusted R square, which is a more prominent way of finding the correlation. Okay, there is something called adjusted R square, which I'll touch upon probably on tomorrow, right? But for the linear regression, we use R square. So hyperparameters is those parameter tuning I told you about the grid search, right? How do you, there are various parameters in a function. So how do you can optimize those parameter values in a function so that you can optimize the performance. Okay, that is used in parameter tuning. Any other questions? Okay, sir, we can close it for the day, sir.
Thank you, sir, for your very informative session. Thank you, Arunjit Chaudhary, sir, for speaking at 1 week Atal FDP organized by Rumta College of Engineering and Technology, Bhilai. Your presentation on the various content related to the Python and its various was very knowledgeable and was very well received by our participants. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. We'll meet tomorrow same time. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Sure. Participants are requested that we are having on next session at 1 o'clock. Okay. There is a little change there. We will be having next session at 12:30. We will be having a speaker ready with us at 12:30 to interact with you with his lecture. Thank you, sir. Thank you all. We will meet at 12:30. Thank you very much.
Sir.